Minnesota Vikings, unfortunately, kind of limp into their bye week, coming off 2 straight losses against Denver and Chicago.
Mhm.
2 games that, let's be honest, they both could have and should have been wins for the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, instead of sitting here talking about a 6-6 operation, we should be talking about an 8-4 football team, getting Justin Jefferson back. Everything's going well, and unfortunately, things just kind of crash and burn these last couple weeks. And I mean, the bye week is supposed to be a time to, you know, get healthy and get ready for kind of the stretch run after that, whatever. And for the Vikings, it is a late bye week, so the stretch run is really a stretch run towards the playoffs.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, I mean, this bye week might need to be a week where a bunch of people on this team do some soul searching, some looking in the mirror, and it's a complete top down thing here with this football team, and there's a lot of things that need to be worked on.
Yeah, 100%. And the first thing is, hey, everybody watching this, like the video and subscribe. Appreciate it big time. But I mean, starting from the top here with just head coaching. We actually made a video that was dropped yesterday on this specifically. We go deep dive, so definitely go check that out. But just to do like a little quick thing, I mean, Kevin O'Connell, the big thing going into this bye week, the reasons why we've been losing is turnovers, number one, and then conservative play calling at these end of the games. We've been talking about conservative play calling earlier, and when we were 1-4, but the difference this time is it's happening towards the end of the games. We found like we're figuring out a lot of this. I mean, these games were kind of conservative, I guess, throughout a little bit, but it's just really obvious towards the end, where when we were on the stretch against San Francisco and Green Bay and the Atlanta game and all that stuff, like we like almost throughout the whole game we're being aggressive. We're not being so conservative. In these last 2 games, it was super obvious. And even with the Saints game as well, that we start doing these conservative things. And it's something that I do think that, I mean, Kev, and you mentioned it in the video that we made, was just consistency. I mean, he has to come out here and be a consistent head coach. If he's going into these games with the mindset like, hey, I'm going to go and win this game, then you stick to that the entire game, even at the end, because at the end is when things are going to get, that's when you're going to get a little bit confused. That's when you're going to get a little emotional. That's when you're going to be wondering, like, should I go here? This isn't the smart play, whatever. Well, that's easy to figure out if you just know, like, no, I came into this game to win this game, and that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I think Kevin O'Connell has to do coming out of this bye. If you're talking about looking at yourself in the mirror, if he's looking out the mirror, he has 2 questions to ask. One is, I need to change that. I need to go out and win games. The other one is, who's going to be my quarterback coming into this game?
Yeah.
And what's your thoughts? What's your thoughts on the quarterback situation? I mean, you can touch into Kevin O'Connell if you want to a little bit, but then go into some of the quarterback situation. What you think Kevin O'Connell should do there?
I think you hit it on the head when it comes to Kevin O'Connell. Like, and again, broken record, great leader. Everybody who watches consistently knows how I feel about Kevin O'Connell from a leadership perspective. But yes, consistency and an overly conservative play calling, and maybe it's not full trust in Dobbs, your quarterback, or full trust in kind of what you have here right now. But again, like, you're the head coach. If you don't have full trust in your offense, it's on you, man. You got to adjust and figure that out on the fly. But I think Kevin O'Connell's the right man for the job. I think he's going to be a good coach here for a long time. But you kind of hit the nail on that with everything else. Like, his soul searching this week needs to be like, I need to put us in better situations to win football games, to go out and put the foot down and win these games.
Yeah, and I just want to bring one thing, because the other thing he has to say, and I brought it up because the turnovers is the other big thing. It's those 2 things, 100%. Going into this bye, that's what you're looking at. And the turnovers things goes to Kevin O'Connell, and that's more of him having accountability on these players that are turning the ball over and and that comes back to the quarterback thing and making the right decisions to make sure, hey, you can't do that. If that's going to happen, you're going to lose playing time. And it might be to the extent of having someone else come in at quarterback. And then the good example of that would be the whole Madison thing, even though he didn't drop the ball last week, but saying that he's going to keep him accountable. You can't put the ball down, but then Madison comes out and plays most of the game anyways, right. That kind of thing. So that's something else he needs to grow as a coach, is be accountable, but stick to your guns too.
Yeah, absolutely. But as you talk about the quarterback scenario, that's an interesting one. And Jamie, actually, he recorded a video on his own that he put out a few days ago, also up on the channel. Make sure you go check that out for some in-depth thoughts on the kind of the differences between the two and who should start. But that is a conundrum, right? Because Josh Dobbs, we all had a feeling that this game was coming. Like, the first week plus or 2 weeks plus were just like, this is too good to be true, right? And then we kind of saw it rear its head in the Denver game. We really saw it rear its head this last game, to where it almost looked like he looked a little bit less comfortable now knowing the plays because, and again, maybe that comes down to Kevin O'Connell trying to fit him into his offense instead of just letting him do his thing, which when he was playing free, he looked a lot better. But again, this whole thing does come down to because he said it himself, which quarterback is going to put Justin Jefferson, and he said this during his Tuesday press conference. He said which quarterback can put Justin Jefferson at his highest level. We all know Justin Jefferson he's already at a high level on his own, but which quarterback can exemplify his traits and be the best quarterback for him? So that's a decision that needs to be made. And with the way he put that and with how non-committal he was to Dobbs, you really do feel like Jaren Hall has a legitimate shot to be the guy. Yeah. People think he had mentioned Nick Mullins. I really don't think Nick Mullins is the option here. But because Jaren Hall, but the thing with Jaren Hall is he had, and sure, he wasn't practicing one-to-one with Jefferson because Jefferson was practicing with the ones and Kirk Cousins, but they know each other. I'm sure they've thrown passes. I'm sure he has thrown passes to Justin Jefferson. So I do think that they're going to have more chemistry than Dobbs and Jefferson have. So it is a decision that needs to be made. I don't know what the right one is. It'll be really interesting to see what Kevin O'Connell decides here. But I mean, yeah, that's one of the things over this bye week. Luckily, you have it. You have a ton of time to decide which direction you want to go, and it's gonna be a tough decision because Dobbs has shown flashes, but I think the biggest thing is we just don't know what Jaren Hall is yet. Jaren Hall could be a solid quarterback that get us through the season. We know Josh Dobbs is probably going to have the highs, but you're going to see the lows like we saw in the Chicago game.
And I mean, you've pretty much hit everything on the button. And I wanted to actually bring up this tweet I saw today, by Jason _777. Some people probably know who he is, but I thought his take here was exactly on point. I'm going to read through it here. My takes on current Vikings quarterback options: Dobbs, if you utilize strategically, he has the highest ceiling out of the group. If he's expected to run the same offense as Kirk, things will get shaky fast. On Mullins, safest option of the bunch, showed flashes earlier in his career, but will likely play the role of a game manager, limits turnovers, but also explosive plays. Hall, in my opinion, he has a chance to be the best of both worlds. Won't throw in interceptions while getting sacked, but won't juke out 3 defenders in the backfield. Also gives the organization a chance to evaluate potential quarterback options. And I thought that was right on the button with all 3 of those quarterbacks. And I do ultimately think he is correct on Jaren Hall. And Jaren Hall gives you the best. It gives you that quarterback that can play in Kevin O'Connell's system as a pocket type of quarterback, but then he's not as athletic as Dobbs, but he does have enough mobility where he can escape the pocket if he needs to, use his legs if he needs to, something we're not going to get out of Mullins. And then, of course, the big one is then you can see what you have in him, because there's a chance he comes in and he's a better option. Even though he's inexperienced in the NFL, he could definitely be a better option than 2 guys that are pretty much for sure going to be backup quarterbacks for the rest of their career. Pretty much, I'm not going to say a fact, but definitely more likely than Hall, even though Hall might be as well. There's definitely the chance that he is as well, but still. Sure. So I like that tweet, and shout out to Jason there.
Yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting topic for discussion. It's going to be talked about a lot over the next week. And I mean, Kevin O'Connell is going to be asked a ton of questions, and it'll be interesting, man. It'll be really interesting to see what he does. But whichever quarterback he decides to go with is only going to be helped by the weapons around him. And all these these last couple of games have kind of been an outlier, but the offensive line, I thought so far this year has played really well. In the run game, I mean, I know on PFF, they were like a highly rated run blocking team. And I think that might just be Madison in this offense. And again, I've said all year, I think Madison is just trying to do too much because we saw this last game when he just played Alexander Madison football. He was a lot more effective than he is when he's trying to make a second cut and bounce the ball aside, because that's just not his style of play. But the running game, and a lot of the running game and passing game obviously predicated on the offensive line, but the running game is something that, if you're looking at another thing Kevin O'Connell needs to work on, is how can we make this running game effective? Because no matter what quarterback you go with now, we're now seeing that you can't just be a completely pass happy offense. Because for Dobbs or Hall to be successful, you're gonna need to keep the defense guessing, which means you're gonna need to be able to run the football effectively. So I think that's one of the other things. He needs to look at his offense and be like, how can I set this offense up better in the run game to open up the pass game?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you were talking about the offensive line here, and that's one thing with them that is weird. Obviously, they have a really good graded offensive line, pass blocking and run blocking as well. I mean, they were number one on PFF for their grade, but it might have came down after this Bear game. But it's one of those things where it's like they're just not very consistent. It's one of those things where they'll have like a great blocking performance, and then all like their bad pass blocking grades probably all came from a couple games.
Yeah.
Like they just have a terrible game as a unit, and then they have a bunch of really good games as a unit. It's kind of like this up and down type of thing. Overall, obviously, I mean, we got to be happy with how they've played overall this season. But I mean, you're right. I think on that we're kind of seeing some inconsistencies, but and you do wonder if that does kind of come to Alexander Madison and Ty Chandler, or I would say Alexander Madison. I mean, if they're one of the highest graded run blockings, but we have like the worst running team, that's got to be on someone there. Something's not right there. And so that's the one thing too, is like, what do you think going forward? Like, who do you think, Madison or Ty Chandler coming after the bye? Obviously, I think we're going to probably see Madison more. He did have probably one of his better games this season last week, but obviously we're still hoping to see more Ty Chandler. But what are you at right now in that situation with Madison and Ty Chandler?
I want to see closer to 50-50. Like I want to see closer to a 50-50 split of run share, because I mean, I just think that's going to make them both more effective, because obviously, yes, Ty Chandler is a lot weaker in the blitz pickup game, but that's something that he just needs playing time to learn. And then Madison is a much more effective blocker, but in the running game, he can't create the explosives that a Ty Chandler can. So I think you need to mix them up. I think you need to go 50-50. I think you need to put them in on plays that you wouldn't exactly see them in for, just to keep defenses guessing. And I think it's going to make all of them better if you kind of mix them up a little bit and try some different things in the running game. So I personally think it needs to go closer to a 50-50 split.
And with Madison, that's one thing. He needs to stick to the one cuts and go. That's like the best thing. Every play he did that. That's what he's supposed to do. He needs to try not to dance so much. He needs to use his power in this game. When he ever had these good runs, it was majority a one cut, boom, go, Adrian Peterson type of style. And that's what we need to see from Alexander Madison going forward. I think, he's not this scat type of running, like speedster type of running back that he kind of seems like he wants to be. It's just not it. I mean, that's what we're going to have Ty Chandler for, and we'll have to hopefully see. I hope it really is like a 50-50 after that. But going from running back here, and kind of going towards wide receiver, what's your takes on our wide receiver position right now, and how do you feel? What do you think JJ's impact is really going to be when he comes back? Like, do you think it's going to be, regardless if you have Dobbs or Jaron, regardless if your quarterback is, do you think he is going to come in and be that big difference for this offense so we can get that rolling again?
I think so. I mean, yeah, you have to, because I mean, what you've seen in these last few games with Dobbs is that he just doesn't have that go-to guy when things aren't going well, right? Or Jaron Hall probably won't either, but you need that guy. Justin Jefferson can be that guy, to where you could push the ball downfield to double coverage, and he will probably find a way to come up with the football. And I don't want to toss in pass catchers in general for this one, because TJ Hawkinson came up big on the scene too these last few weeks, and I think he's going to be very important to the team going forward as well, as a pass catcher, especially with a younger or inexperienced quarterback in the offense like Dobbs, younger like Hall. It's going to be important. But Justin Jefferson, man, I think JJ coming in is going to make everybody more effective, because Jordan Addison, we're starting to see it now. He's too young to be that true blue number one option on this team. When he was a number two option, or when he was playing with Kirk, he was pretty good. But when he was a number two option, he was a lot more effective, I think, because JJ is going to draw extra coverage, so he's going to be getting a lot of one-on-ones. So I think Justin Jefferson coming back is going to make things infinitely better. I mean, KJ Osborne was a little more effective as well with Kirk Cousins. We haven't seen that effectiveness since, but him kind of going back to that number three role, I think, will help him out a lot. But man, I think Justin Jefferson needs to come back. He needs to become a focal point of this offense again. But at the same time, I don't want to see Kevin O'Connell completely rely on him. Right. I just want to see him push him back in. And when things aren't going well, he can be your guy, like the guy that we're drawing up a play for JJ. If we get a close enough look that we want, we'll toss a ball that either he's going to catch or no one's going to catch. Yeah. And I think you do need to rely on him heavily now.
Yeah. And I mean, to JJ thing, that's a big one too, as we talk about and Josh Dobbs did go deep in this game. And actually that was my favorite thing of this entire game by far, was the very first play of the game, trying to go deep to Jordan Addison, because I knew for a fact, and we talked about it on like nonstop going into this game, like that's what needs to happen. They need to open up this offense. Otherwise the Bears are just going to consistently bring the blitz and cover short. And ultimately we kind of went away from the long throws for most of this game. And that's exactly what happened. The Bears had their best pass rush performance, us having our worst. And then, and they're covering us short, and it was hard to battle against that. So with JJ coming in, like no matter what, you get a guy that I think you can just throw the ball up to him, and he's going to get, and he's able to come. He's more than likely going to, if he's on one-on-one, my money is on JJ almost every single time. Obviously, if he's on 2-on-1, well, now, like you were talking about with Jordan Addison, is now you have Jordan Addison that only has to worry one-on-one. He doesn't have to go against the best cornerbacks every single time, like he was since JJ got hurt. And that's to your case too with Jordan Addison, is I do think he's young, a little bit young and stuff, to maybe be an absolute true. He doesn't have the physical to be a like legit, like actual wide receiver one. I think he has the absolute skill set to be a wide receiver one. But right now in his career, he's perfect to be a high-end wide receiver too, with JJ taking some pressure off of him. Because I mean, the reality is and this wasn't his best game. He did get open a lot in this game, and it was nice to see them go towards Jordan Addison a lot in this game. But there's a couple things with, again, I mean, when he obviously bobbled that ball that went for interception. He should get that. It does seem like he does have a problem with letting the ball, when he catches the ball and goes to the ground, he lands right on the ball, and a lot of the times it bounces out and things like that. Just holding on to the ball has been kind of more of an issue. But then on the other side, like that catch he made on that was a catch and should have been challenged. Talking about Kevin O'Connell, that's what it was. And I did want to mention this in our Kevin O'Connell video, was the challenges. That's what it was. But he should have in the inconsistency of his challenges. He does it at the wrong times every single time, or doesn't do it at the right time, whatever. But that was an example. I mean, that catch by Jordan Addison was insane. Like, he shouldn't have caught that. He stole that right out of the dude's hands.
Which he did in San Francisco too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that you see out of Jordan Addison, makes him such a special player, because he can do stuff like that. And another thing about Jordan Addison that I really like, and obviously I'm a big Jordan Addison fan here, but after that game, I guess he just sat there with all his uniform on and everything, and someone kind of went up to him and like, hey, are you good or whatever? And he was just extremely disappointed. I mean, you have to find the balance about being hard on yourself and stuff. But if you see how much he cares, if someone is that hard on himself, and he was really hard on himself about the catch that bobbled off his hand and was intercepted. And then that other long throw that he felt he was out of bounds, even though obviously that was more on the quarterback. It could have been a lot better throw, but Jordan Addison, honestly, he generally probably makes those catches because he's so good with his footwork on the sidelines. And I do think that was something that he was worried about. So, I mean, it does show you what Jordan Addison will be, but yeah, you can only imagine Justin Jefferson being back into the fold and not feeling like we need to rely on him so much, is, other than maybe deep down the field, is going to be huge for this offense.
For sure. And then, I mean, so that kind of covers the offense. Like there's a lot of soul searching that needs to be on offense, and that all starts Kevin O'Connell, head coach, offensive play caller. You got to get that wrapped up. Defensively, we'll kind of keep this short and sweet. We've been going on for a while here. Defensively, just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, you got Danielle Hunter, who's tied for the league lead in sacks. He's been playing phenomenal. He's going to get paid next year. DJ Wanham is stepping up. Harrison Phillips is having a huge year. Linebacker wise, we got Ivan Pace. Hopefully Jordan Hicks gets back after his 4 weeks on IR, because he was playing phenomenally. Defensive backfield, you got it. Corners are a concern, but safeties.
But they've been doing well. Like, it's just Flores' system, though. It's like we don't have the most talented corners, but I think we're like in the 80s for coverage grade, according to PFF. Like, they've been able to stay. It's Brian Flores, man. I mean, God, you got to tip his hat to him. If anyone would have said we'd be relying on our defense to make it to playoffs, and that Bears game was the best example you could ever see of us step. And then, of course, Kevin O'Connell's fault. he relied on them too much to the point where it's like, hey, bro, they've already been carrying us this whole game. Maybe it's a time you keep it easy on their part or whatever.
Sure.
But man, it was
but then
impressive.
The safeties, Harrison Smith hasn't had quite the impact I thought he'd have this year, but Cam Bynum and Josh Metellus, who Metellus is kind of playing that safety nickel,
and Metellus has been getting better and better.
Metellus, man, that was a lot of fans weren't happy about the Metellus re-signing, but
dude, him is the nickel. Him in the nickel, man. It's been huge. Him bringing the pressure. That's something we didn't realize he was going to bring to that extent this season. And we've been seeing that in that last game against the Bears. I mean, it was his best game of the year, in my opinion. And what you said about Cam Bynum, dude, I mean, both those guys have been a huge part of this defense. And it's really our defense in general has been as solid as you could possibly ask for. And that is why, I mean, if we can figure out this quarterback going after the bye here, if we can figure out this quarterback thing, it doesn't have to be any crazy. Like, I do think Jaren Hall can play safe enough, and you might have more of that game manager thing, but at least he can escape the pocket. And he has also played with this team throughout the offseason. He hasn't been on this team for only like 3 or 4 weeks or whatever Dobbs has. It does give you a good option. He has more of a rapport with these other wide receivers and stuff like that. So, I mean, if you bring him in and you have JJ now, you have a top 10 offensive line, even if they have their bad games, and a top 15 very solid defense. If you can mix that in the right way, I mean, there's obviously a really good chance that we make playoffs, but I mean, there could still be a good chance that we can actually do something in it if all things click. But I do kind of think it really will come down to like, what can we get out of our quarterback regardless. But
absolutely. And then final thing we'll touch on before we let you guys go here is the guys swinging their legs and connecting with the football for this team. It's been not great, but
it's been just regular Greg Joseph season.
And Ryan Wright is awful. He is not good this year. He is not good this year.
Yeah, he has not been as good as we were hoping. I mean, second year, hopefully, I think punters are like one of those ones where they can have an off year and then come back and be better at least. Hey, we're praying.
But anyway, obviously Vikings do stumble going into the bye week, but they have some really important games coming up. 3 in division still have a great chance to make the playoffs, but you got to get the ship turned around. You got to get the players ready to go. Justin Jefferson's coming back. So, and here's the thing with Kevin O'Connell, all chips are in now. Like it's win or go home for the rest of the way out through the season. So you better figure out during the bye week, how am I going to start trying to stomp on some throats here? Cause you got to start being aggressive because you're in it now, man. It's win or go. It's win or go home at this point. So we want to know what your guys' thoughts are going into this bye week. How do you feel about the Minnesota Vikings franchise for the rest of the season? Let us know down in the comment section. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys next time right here on the GG Sports Podcast.
Skol Vikes.